Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. We're going to be going over the most recent Arsenal transfer news. So make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, and get into the chat and let me know what you're thinking. Already kind of reading the chat. There's definitely, I feel like, some positivity, some definite negativity, but the Declan Rice saga is going to come to an end. And I think a lot of us, whether we're positive on it or negative on it, would just like to see it done in either way, right? And over the last couple of days, there's kind of like a lot that happened, but nothing at the same time. It's weird because we haven't heard any news around bids, but potential bids, imminent bids, bids coming in 24 hours, prepared bids. That's all we've been really hearing. And today we've gotten a little bit more clarity on what's going on in the Declan Rice deal. And so it should be coming to a close, which should make most people happy no matter what. Now, over the last couple of days, the timeline, we have to go over it because I think it's significant. I think after our second bid was rejected, there definitely was some why not just put in what they want? Because now we're going to allow other teams to come in. And lo and behold, Manchester City started to come in. The Gundogan deal to Barcelona went through, and then like clockwork, they were in on the Declan Rice deal, and that came from Fabrizio Romano. It also came from also David Ornstein. So the news was legitimate. They had genuine interest. They have genuine interest in Declan Rice, and I think that made everybody really nervous. Maybe a day went by, nothing really happened. We didn't put in a bid. They didn't put in a bid, even though everybody was saying that their bid and their offer was imminent. And then DiMarzio tweeted that, you know, uh, Manchester City were ready to put in a bid right then. And the bid was going to be 75 million plus 15, which is exactly what our bid was, but it was going to be in the 2 installments that West Ham wanted with more achievable add-ons, which was startling. You never want to see anything like that. I think what I was hoping was that they weren't going to come in, right? And then so that kind of made it seem more real, that they're definitely coming in. They have some intention on, putting in a significant bid that we have not been able to come up with. I was happy to see that the overall bid was not more than what we were willing to offer. I just wasn't sure that we had, maybe the capital to put up front. So that definitely was a worry. And then from there, obviously, carnage, on the timeline. Oh my gosh, we're losing him. What the fuck? Time went by, nothing happened. And then I believe it was on Thursday. Today is Saturday, right? On Thursday, another tweet came out from DiMarzio saying that the deal was close to completion, or they were coming to an agreement and everybody was confident that the deal could get done. And I thought it was done then. I'm not even going to lie to you guys. I was like, wow, it's definitely done now. Close to agreement. What the fuck? Are we even going to put in a third bid? Have they shut us out? What's going on? And I remember I was out at an event when that tweet came through, because it was quite late. It was 9 p.m. on Thursday night where it came out. And I remember there was some people from AFTV were there, some other content creators were there. And, everybody was like, oh, I heard about Rice. Sorry. It was almost like people were like, sorry for your loss. It was so bad. Right. And from there, I kind of thought that we had lost him. I was like, that's it. What are we going to do? It's close to agreement. The only weird thing about it was there was no article attached to it. It was just a tweet. And usually, if an Ornstein or a credible journalist comes out with something, it's usually attached to an article, but it was literally just a tweet. Then more time went by, and I did see, the reports coming out from, ex-West Ham employee, basically saying that no bids had went in. No bids had really went in. Manchester City are interested, but no bids had come in, and Arsenal's bid hadn't went in either. And so, it was kind of felt like a stalemate, or maybe a little bit of some games that were being played, because realistically, if you're close to an agreement, there would be some figures attached to it. there was no mention of whether or not Arsenal were going to come in with a new bid. It was strange. Then Jacob Steinberg, as well as Sammy McBell, they were saying, like, came out with some reports saying that Arsenal are still in pole position. They're still in the lead. That's where, Declan Rice wants to be. And, there's been nothing formal from Manchester City, but also nothing from Arsenal. It's just whether or not Arsenal can agree the fee. And then another tweet came out from DiMarzio yesterday, which was crazy. It was like yesterday, then he said that they were in advanced talks. And it was just like, okay, so what's going on? Like, are they in advanced talks? Are they putting in bids? What are they doing? And then ex-West Ham employee came out again and said there was no bids from Manchester City. And like nothing had really changed. And everything is just very confusing, but it didn't feel good from an Arsenal perspective because it was like, well, what are we doing? Why are we not being mentioned? Are we just letting it slip? And I think, even I fell victim of it. And you guys remember, like, I've been very chill the entire time, but it just didn't feel good seeing somebody say that they were in advanced talks or whatever. But, when ex-West Ham employee came out and said that there had been no bids, and, Jacob Steinberg was also said, like, this came out last night, that Arsenal's third bid was imminent. And, West Ham know that this bid is going in. It should be at 100 million, which is what West Ham have kind of always been asking for. And no formal bid has went in from Manchester City. And that's what kind of made me perk up. I was like, oh, they're waiting on our third bid. We're still in the race. Like, it's not over. Like, we can still get this done. And so leads me to today, which you guys are asking, what is the breaking news? Why did you put breaking news? Well, first of all, I wanted to get you here, so make sure you guys like this video. You guys know I like a little clickbait. But, today, not just from, West Ham employee has said it, as well as Clarendon Blue, both of those well-connected West Ham in the knows have said that basically the reason why Manchester City has not bid is because they know that Declan Rice wants to come to Arsenal, and he's been very firm on that. And so now they're waiting on Arsenal to bid, to put in their third and final bid, so that the saga is pretty much over. TalkSport also reiterated that same thing, which echoes everything that Jacob Steinberg, as well as Sammy McBell, has said, is that they're waiting on the third bid, and Manchester City have interest, but they never formalized it with a bid. And we all know that Manchester City is not going to bid on a player that they're not sure really wants to come to the club, which I feel like that's kind of the stance for most big clubs. Like, nobody wants to be in like a very public bidding war that they can't win. So knowing that they haven't bid and that Arsenal their third and final bid is imminent, and West Ham are encouraging Arsenal to put it in so that the saga will end, feels like we're getting to a place where we could be getting Declan Rice. As long as everything is true, which we've always known that his preferred destination is Arsenal, that, Arsenal, this is their priority. And even though that Manchester City is interested, his preference is to go to Arsenal and they won't bid, we're in a really good position. Like, we are in a very, very strong position. And so even though maybe 24, 48 hours, it seemed that maybe we had let it slip and bottled it, it does seem like we're in a very, very strong position to get this done. And we spoke about this the other day, how important this signing is. Not just like the amount of like pundits and, ex-players that played for rival teams don't want Declan Rice to go to Arsenal. They feel like he should go to a Manchester City because if he wants to win trophies, he should go somewhere where it's guaranteed. They prefer him to go to a Manchester United because Manchester United is the traditional, English club. Like, that's where he should go and go play for Ten Hag, or go back to your childhood club because, Chelsea, they're always going to spend money and they're going to eventually win something. So nobody wants him to come to Arsenal. And this is potentially their next England captain that could end up playing for Arsenal. This is a big deal. 100 million pounds could be the English record, right? And so this is massive. This is absolutely massive. And to be in a position right here, right now, where Arsenal just pretty much have to put in a bid that they know West Ham will accept, which at this point they should know what that figure is, what those numbers look like. We are probably 48 to 72 hours away from potentially securing one of the biggest English talents there is. Like, that is a huge, huge deal. And so obviously nothing is done yet, because I know probably the chat, I don't even have to look at it, is saying, well, nothing is done, nothing is done, nothing is done. But if we're willing to overreact or react negatively to things when it's not done going the other direction, surely we can react positively to similar or other reports from credible outlets saying that it's moving in a positive direction for us. So it's interesting, but nothing is done. Like, obviously all the in the knows and stuff like that, the Arsenal in the knows are absolutely awful, are all saying that they know what the figure is and it's done. It's not done yet, but Arsenal, third and final bid going in. His preference is known. It's Arsenal. Manchester City are not bidding, and I have a feeling that they will not bid because they don't want to lose on a player that they don't think they can get. Now, I also saw, this is also what kind of got, the thinking cap kind of going the other day. This might have been yesterday, was that there was a article that came out from like Manchester Evening News, I think, but it was the Manchester City side, and they're tier 1 for them. Tier 1 for them. So, I don't know, that's the equivalent of, like, I don't know, whoever's tier 1 for us, it's tier 1 for them. And they were saying that Manchester City didn't know where they were going to play Declan Rice. They're interested in him, but they're not quite sure what their midfield is going to look like. They have some outgoings, but they're not quite sure. They need to spend really big in the defense. And so they have other priorities, and spending over 100 million for a player that they're not quite sure what they're going to do with, or, whatever. And they kind of know that his preference is to go somewhere else. That's why they haven't formalized their interest. You know, this was before like anything from today. And it just felt like the type of article that comes out to make it seem like Manchester City were not that interested in him anyway. Because, if you don't know where you're going to play him and he's not a priority for you and the defense is the priority, then no, you're not going to go toe to toe with Arsenal, where his preferred destination is said to be. So, yeah, it's a little bit reading between the lines, and obviously nothing is done. But like I said, they're like, it's going. It's definitely going. And so put in that final bid and get it done, Arsenal, because this is a massive deal. We speak about this, like, who are going to be the players that kind of change, I think, the perception of Arsenal, take us to that next level. And we often, earmark like Allison and Van Dijk. Now, they're a goalkeeper and a center back, and we don't necessarily need marquee signings in those positions. The marquee signing for us would definitely probably be in midfield, maybe even a striker, in the future. This would end up being like our Van Dijk signing, somebody that we were going toe to toe with another big team for. We ended up getting them. They kind of define this project. And reading everything that, Jacob Steinberg and, Sammy McBell put out the other day around how Arteta gave Arsenal the edge in these negotiations, was he basically told him that we were going to build the entire project around him, that he was going to be our captain. Every single like lineup or formation that they showed him was with him on it. And it's just a matter of, does Declan Rice want to be a player that steps into an already well-oiled machine? You're a part of it. By nature, you're going to, whether you play or not, win something. Or do you want to be the reason why Arsenal get back to where they're supposed to be? And nobody knows who Declan Rice is personally. Like, none of us really know him. But based on reports, it feels like he's leaning towards coming to a club and being a big reason why they get back to where they want to be. And I think that would say a lot about his character, because a lot of players would just say, I'm just going to go to Manchester City and just win things, regardless if I'm important in the team or not. And yeah, that's a long-winded way of like, kind of like, giving you guys the timeline and showing where we are. And, but I do think could be a massive signing for Arsenal, especially because Arteta is said to be like really pushing to get this done. He needs this signing. Like, the club cannot let him down. he's done all the work to get us in front of Manchester City, not just Manchester City, in front of Manchester United as well as Bayern. This is not like, this is serious shit, you know? So he's done his job. The board have to do theirs, and the Cronkies hopefully have done theirs as well to give them the funds necessary to put together a bid that West Ham will definitely say yes to. So yeah. MM says, I'm sorry, y'all have zero composure. Let's see. Ilya says, where's everyone getting the Rice info from? It's a combination of what Jacob Steinberg and, you know, Sammy McBell have been saying the entire time. Sammy McBell is very reliable and has been reliable for Arsenal for quite a period of time. Jacob Steinberg is closer to West Ham, but he's always maintained that Rice's, you know, most likely destination would be Arsenal. And if Arsenal could agree the £100 million fee and agree that with West Ham, that he would most likely end up being an Arsenal player. So he's been kind of on it since the beginning. He was the one who broke that initial news maybe a week or so ago about Arsenal, you know, being close to completing the deal for 100 million. So it's a combination of them with, you know, some West Ham, I would say like in the know accounts. And, you know, you might be like, well, why would we believe them? Like, what do they know? But, you know, they've always been reliable, whether it's been about Arsenal or not. And then you have somebody like Andy Goldberg, who's actually close to Chelsea. I think he's a Chelsea fan. That was the original person that broke the Kai Havertz news and has always maintained that Arsenal are front runners in pole position for Declan Rice. This is his preferred destination. It's just whether or not Arsenal could get, they just need to be able to put together something that West Ham will want. And now TalkSport is saying it, like, it's definitely there. You know, there's definitely something there. Let's see. I saw some super chats come in. Let me just go back a little bit because I think I missed some of them. Let's see. I hope I didn't miss too many. I hope I don't miss any. I see one here. T1 says that us Chelsea fans need this deal to go through. Come on, Arsenal. Probably thinking from the perspective of not want, like, because if Arsenal were not to get Declan Rice, they would turn their attention to Caicedo. So I hear that. Jay says, Edu played this well, no panicking, Rice to Arsenal. And here's the thing is, like, I remember at the beginning of this whole saga or whatever, that from the minute, like even before the window opened, from the moment that West Ham finished that final, there was already kind of like this undercurrent of negativity from the Arsenal fan base of why is it not done? The window opened 2 days into it. I remember sitting here with you guys and why isn't it done? Oh my gosh, we're taking too long. Oh my gosh, we're taking too long. Oh my gosh, we're taking too long. Then when the first bid got rejected, why not just give them what they're asking for? Now, the deal is not done, but the original fee for Declan Rice, we all remember, was 120 million. That's initially what West Ham wanted. Then as talks continued and our bid started getting rejected, it went down to 100 million. If we're able to secure him for 100 million, Edu has played that perfectly. Go. What are you doing?
What's up, people?
This is not your show. Go. This is not the football terrorist. Like, you see what I deal with? Do you see what I deal with? But yeah. So Edu would have played this perfectly. So nothing is done, but I said from the beginning, wait and see. And there was a lot of Edu out, a lot of Cronky out, a lot of everybody out. And I remember when I told you guys, I don't know how you roll it back. Like, if we do get Rice, I don't know how you roll it back because there was a really big, I think, overreaction to the 2 initial bids not getting accepted. But let's see. Let's see what you guys are saying here. Let's see. Let's see. Ash says all outlets saying Arteta is the key factor. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Like, Arteta can convince Willian that we were going to win the Champions League in 3 seasons. Like, he can talk anybody into anything. He's very convincing. And I think depending on what kind of player you are, if somebody sits there and tells you that, you know, they have full belief in you, you're going to be the reason why Arsenal win titles and Champions Leagues and whatever, and you're going to be this and that, and this is how I'm going to use you, and you explain it in a way that they fully understand, and they believe, like, that could be very pivotal in somebody's, decision to go somewhere. And I kind of thought that Arteta had some of this, like, with when we originally signed Jesus and Zinchenko, because them leaving City, they could have went anywhere. Like, they could have went to Chelsea, they could have went to Spurs, they could have went to any club that had Champions League at the time and been fine. But they chose to go to Arsenal, which a year ago, like, it was very difficult to kind of see like what we were going to be, because we had missed out on top 4 and we were in the Europa League, and there was a lot of negativity around the project and it's not working, and you bottled it, this and that. And he was able to convince those two. I know that they've, been managed by him before, but again, like, they still could have went other places. I thought, okay, this is somebody that people believe in to do right by their career. Because you sign for a team, you're kind of in bed with them for a while. So, if you're going to sign not your life away, but kind of your career away for a certain amount of time, you have to believe in where you're going, especially if you have other options. So, Arteta is the type of person that I think can convince people of what he's saying. And this is why he deserves the players that he's going after, because we I'm not going to say that we have no right to Declan Rice, but if you had asked somebody, you know, if you ask people, like, taking the season away, just blanket, like, just blank, where do you think Declan Rice would end up? And you had Chelsea, Man United, Man City, and Arsenal in a multiple choice. Most people would not choose Arsenal. So he has done all of his work to get this player to really believe that this is where he should be. Now it's up to the club to get it done. Make sure you guys are liking this video and subscribing to the channel. There's 1,200 of you guys in here. Thierry Henry, thank you so much for your super chat. Says he chose the LeBron route for his legacy rather than the KD route. Also, Arteta really is him. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to say this multiple times because I know people in the comments are screaming, "Oh my gosh, it's not done yet." But that does not take away from the fact that Rice does want to come to Arsenal, and Arteta is the reason why. And so, just in this moment alone, I think it's really important to acknowledge the fact that, like, Arteta has done major work to get us in this position. Remember, this is like potentially England's future captain. That's not something to, like, we know we have suffered under Harry Kane for years. You know what kind of favor you get when you have the England captain on your team? We need that shit, so he's done quite a bit there, and he deserves his plaudits, whether it goes through or not, because it will not be on Arteta if it does not. Let's see, I think that might be all the super chats that I saw come through. So now I'll read some of the non-paid for, obviously. Let's see. Jordan says, going to Arsenal is still a bigger career move than going to City. Arsenal is historic, globally followed club, and we didn't have to, like, buy that. City's greatness is inorganic. Is City's one of those things. I think there's a reason why people would prefer him to go to City. It's not necessarily because it's for his career. It's because we know it as well as Arsenal fans, is when it's City, it doesn't hurt as much, because there's almost like this feeling of, like, maybe they bought it or it's not real. Like you said, it's inorganic. And so, I kind of I understand that aspect of things as well. I'm not sure if that's necessarily the reason why he wouldn't want to go there. He's preferring Arsenal is because it's inorganic, but it's just interesting how, like, people are trying to push him into going to Manchester City, when I think for the sake of the league anyway, just so that they don't run away with everything, it'd probably be better if one of the best players in the league goes somewhere else other than City. Like, it's just interesting. But yeah, like, there is a feeling of, like, they're not as organic or something like that. And that's why it doesn't hurt when they win. Remember, City won a treble just like maybe 2 weeks ago. And, like, literally no one cares. Like, it's not being talked about. If Jack Grealish wasn't getting drunk off his ass, no one would care. And that's not to say it's not an amazing achievement. But if any other English team had done that, we'd still be fucking hearing about it. So yeah, it's interesting. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Michael says, even Odegaard said in an interview, I challenge anyone to come away from a meeting with Arteta and not believe everything he tells you. Immaculate Riz. Yeah. He's definitely got it, you know. John P says Timber Rice Havertz is exceptional 2 weeks in, and Lavia is one of the best teenagers in Europe in his position. Everything looks good to me. It feels like we're getting back on track. You know, there was a moment I felt like, you know, early on in the window where there was a lot of excitement, and then because the Rice deal wasn't going as fast as people wanted, there was a lot of negativity. It feels like we're coming back to an equilibrium. We just have to get it done from here. And I think the next 48 to 72 hours could be massive, massive, massive. Let me just make sure nothing else has come through. You guys know when things break, when the show is on, it's just insane. So I just want to make sure I'm getting ahead of everything. So yeah, nothing, but it's just one of those things where I feel like we're in a really good space. You know, we're in a really good position at the moment. Slow Boy Clay says, Jess, if Arsenal wanted him so bad, then why are they trying to pay peanuts for Rice, who is West Ham's captain and best player, yet they are happy to pay 70 million for Chelsea reject they don't need? Well, I feel like what the fans feel like the club needs versus what the club feels like they need are two completely different things. So whether we understand the Havertz deal or not, it doesn't really matter. They felt like they needed him, and buying Havertz first doesn't represent any sort of priority. They have a certain amount budgeted for Declan Rice, and I'm sorry, but to call 100 million pounds peanuts, to me, just maybe you don't know the value of money, maybe you don't realize like how big this is, but this could end up being the most expensive transfer of an English player. You know, if it eclipses Jack Grealish, then it is. So this is not small money. They're not being cheap, you know, but again, like I said, if the original fee for Declan Rice was 120 million and we end up getting him for 100, then Edu deserves praise and some apologies, because we will have saved 20 million. And remember, we spoke about this when we went through each transfer, when you guys were just saying pay the money, pay the money, pay the money. If you just pay the money and you give them an additional 20 million that you didn't have to, you give an extra 15 million that you didn't have to, an extra 10 that you didn't have to, that's 60, that could end up being 60 million that could be used for another position that we want to fill. So not only do I not really agree with the idea that Havertz or anything has anything to do with this, because we all know that they budget for certain transfers, whether we want him or not, they felt like this was a priority signing for them. And to call 100 million peanuts, it's just silly, in my opinion. It just doesn't make sense. It's a huge outlay. And just because the media tried to make it seem like we were, you know, penny pinching, like to not have to pay for him, if we save a little bit on it, that's smart business. You can never say that's saving a little bit on a transfer. You end up getting your priority target and you saved. That was not a smart move. So yeah, I don't really agree with any of that, to be fair. Like if he pulls it off and it's less than what they originally were asking for, he was right. You know? Tyrion Reese says, what do you think the chat what do you in the chat think Rosetta told Rice to reject Pep and his treble winning team, that he was going to be the cornerstone of this project, you know? And I just also, one of the things that I think you know is important is to remember that the way our rivals see us is not the way that players see us, you know, or other managers, or you know, people that actually are working in football don't view our clubs the way that fans do. And I think we take way too much stock in what rivals think and don't take into account the types of players that are interested in coming to Arsenal. And that in itself, I think, speaks volumes to like how we're actually viewed. Players that are coming into their prime, that are signing long-term deals to be at Arsenal, clearly think we're the place to be, that they can win trophies, that they can be successful. And so, you know, I don't take very much stock in what rivals think, because we're all meant to think each other is shit, even though we know that we're not, right? But yeah, like he probably just told him like, you're going to be the cornerstone of this project. You're going to be our captain, and you're going to lead us to trophies. And he probably believed it. Which is great. Terrence Tibbs says, example is majority of Chelsea fans are from West Africa, and who cares what they think. I don't know anything about that, but that's interesting. Gary says Rice is going to choose Arsenal because of love and adoration. Well, here's the thing is, like, if he chooses Arsenal, people will say that it's because it's just in London. But if he doesn't, it'll be because, he wanted to win trophies and stuff like that. It will never be, the narrative won't be that he thinks he'll win trophies at Arsenal. So again, I'm sure Manchester City can pay him the exact same amount that we can pay him. So, you can't really say it's money. He can win things somewhere else. So, and Manchester, if he really wanted to go there, he would move. So I think it's more about what Arsenal or Arteta is pitching to him than anything else. But if the narrative is spun that he just wanted to stay in London, I really don't give a fuck, because he would be our player, and I really don't care. So, but yeah, Ash says, intangibles of the deal and message it sends is huge. Yeah, it's massive. Like, this is a really, really big deal. And I think the response to it, I think the devastation that people felt when it felt like it wasn't going to get done, just highlighted how important this signing is. Because some signings, you're okay if they don't come off, or you're kind of like, well, there's other options. When you really think about it, there's not that many options that offer the same levels as Declan Rice does, and that's why he's in such high demand. So it has to get done. Ryan says, what's the point of getting Rice and losing Partey and Xhaka? It's not a league winning mentality. Well, I think, Xhaka has gone from being not rated to overrated very quickly. And I think there's definitely a world where he leaves and we get better, because in that left 8 position, that position that he was playing, we need more creativity there. We need somebody that's agile, that can dribble, that has more of that creative eye. We need somebody with a little bit more tools in their belt. And I think Xhaka, like, he did a really good job, but he was never going to get better than what he was this season. And I never viewed him as somebody that would sit on the bench, so seeing him go is not only not unsurprising to me, but it's also something that I feel very, very comfortable with. Like, I think he did a really good job, but it's almost to the point now where people are thinking we need him to be successful or something. Like, it's fine. Granit Xhaka, like, we have Emile Smith-Rowe, we have, Vieira. I know people don't rate him, but those are the types of players that we need to be giving those minutes to, so that they can become the players that that we need, instead of just keeping Xhaka around because of experience. Like, it's fine. With Thomas Partey, it's a little bit different, because he's a top player, where Xhaka to me is good. Thomas Partey is very, very, very good. When he's on it, he's like top one, like, not one. He's never better than Rodri, but he's my, like, top 2, 3 in his position. So losing him does create a little bit of a hole there in the team. I don't think Arsenal would even be considering moving Thomas Partey on if the elephant wasn't in the room. And so I think when you consider everything, and the fact that it feels like it's happening quickly and it's happening out of nowhere, I think we can maybe use a little bit of deductive reasoning on why he's leaving. And it probably doesn't have anything to do with what he does on the pitch. It probably has something to do with off the pitch. And from an Arsenal perspective, that's just not something that, I don't think we could risk. I don't think we could risk something like that being the cloud over our head for the next season anyway. So I think, in an ideal world, you'd keep him. But in the world that we're in right now, you might want to move him on. If Saudi Arabia are also willing to offer you almost the exact same amount that you paid for him, it's also a market opportunity. And Arsenal fans complain every single day about the fact that we don't sell players. The reason why we don't sell players is because we keep them too damn long. Good teams know when to move on from players and bring in new players and fill that gap. And if you're bringing Declan Rice in to be the number 6, and you bring in Lavia to kind of be like, somebody that you're kind of kind of letting them apprentice, under Jorginho and Declan Rice, and he doesn't have a very serious role in the team to start off with, then I think you're fine. I think you're fine there. But yeah, I understand the anxiety and reluctancy to move on from someone like Thomas Partey, but taking everything into consideration, I do think that Arsenal might want to take this opportunity to move him on. So there's definitely that. It's all about how you replace them. And there was a time where people felt like, we should keep Aubameyang and then, keep him around and, why not just, da da da, we're not going to be able to. And as long as we replaced him properly, we got better. And I think with Thomas Partey, it could be similar that we don't really, it's hard to see how we would operate without him because he's been so important and pivotal to the team for 3 years. But if you replace properly, then we may be looking halfway through next season laughing because we have new players in those positions that take us up a level, and we also got almost all of our money back for somebody that has a really, you know, an elephant in the room, that's not good, So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, but I kind of understand, I understand not wanting him to go because the idea was we'll just keep Xhaka and Partey and relegate them to the bench and bring in new players, but sometimes that's just not how things go. Billy says, a West Ham fan here, 100 million isn't peanuts. The offer was 75 million. Well, that's also what, Man City were also willing to offer was the 75 million plus 15, which ended up being 90 altogether. And so if Arsenal are able to reach the 100 million, that's definitely not peanuts, and make the add-ons more achievable. Maybe instead of winning the Champions League or the Premier League, you do something like, wins or something like that, something more achievable, whatever. But I think even West Ham fans, or no offense, but a little, very quick to jump on the neck of Arsenal because they're losing their captain. And I think some of it was a little bit more about who you were losing him to potentially, and not necessarily how much we were going to spend. What Arsenal offered at first was nowhere near as big of an embarrassment or, disrespect as people were making out to seem. That is what the media was saying because they wanted the pile on Arsenal. But the fact that Manchester City were willing to offer exactly the same, but the only difference was the money up front, I think shows that it was just because it was Arsenal, and so even 75 million is not peanuts. Like, that's a lot of money. And so the way that it was being spoken about for me was just a little ridiculous. It wasn't enough, and we were in negotiations. And as we're seeing, our West Ham started at 120 and Arsenal started off at I don't know, 90, and now we're getting closer to the middle, which is how negotiations work. Remember, Chelsea's first offer for Moises Caicedo was 60 million, and they've been publicly asking for 100. So it's just because it's Arsenal. That's all it is, Let's see what else. Doof says, please, Arsenal, do not bid until City bid. Can't be outbidding yourself when no one has bid against you. Osriel says, sell Xhaka and Partey. What's El Neni still doing at the club? Add Lukonga to the Rice deal. Thus, we can get Havertz, Rice, and Lavia in. I don't think you have to add Lukonga to the deal at all. And the whole thing about El Neni is still at the club. There's also really concrete rumors that he's going to be going as well. So it won't be El Neni. It's going to be Jorginho, hopefully Rice, and Lavia as our DM options. And it's not Partey. And I know people want Partey to be there, but that's not bad. It's really not. It could actually be really good. So, it's yet to be seen. But yeah, this whole well, Neni is going to be here, and you're choosing to get rid of Thomas Partey over getting rid of El Neni. We know it's not that simple. I know the narrative means that we want to remove any sort of context so that it makes sense in our brains, but realistically, Thomas Partey has 2 years left on his deal. We're not going to extend him, and we should not, based on what we've gotten back from the transfer. As good as he is, you have to say that for the most part, he's been maybe disappointing, because you spend 45 million on a player that's supposed to be your best player. That's what he's being paid as. He's getting 250,000 pounds per week. And for the first 2 seasons, he was injured for the majority of it. And if he did play, he wasn't amazing. This season was his first good season, and he still kind of went missing towards the end. So if you're Arsenal and you're thinking about it, do we actually want to extend him? No. So we have to figure out stick or twist. And if Saudi Arabia offer you 40 million, which again, I've said this from the beginning, we should not sell him for peanuts. Like if somebody offers 18 million, 20 million, we should not sell. But if somebody offers anything north of 35, remember we played for 45 for him, you take that. Because again, if it's obvious you should sell a player, it's too late. You're not going to get any value back. And so, yeah, I think Arsenal are fine. And I don't think this whole like, well, we're keeping El Neni and so, but we're selling Thomas Partey. If you add back all the context, you can understand why they might want to move him on. Jude Law says Newcastle is getting a better deal for Tonali as Arsenal are getting priced out by West Ham. Let's see. Tonali is a good player. I don't dislike him or anything. I have to say that I've never necessarily super rated him. Like he's not somebody that I've sat down and watched and felt like, oh my gosh, we have to have this player or anything like that. Yeah, maybe Newcastle are getting a better deal for him because they're paying significantly less. But I still feel like people are undermining or like underplaying the magnitude of getting Declan Rice. Like it's nowhere like Tonali is, he's the commercial opportunities that Declan Rice are going to give you. Like the thing is like we already have Saka, you add Declan Rice to that. I know that people don't like these things, but like beyond what they can do on the pitch, the commercial opportunities, the PR, the favor that you get for having England internationals in your team, Tonali's not going to do that for you. And with what Arsenal need, they need more athleticism in the team. They need more physicality in the team. And when I watch somebody like Tonali, I don't necessarily view him as a particularly athletic player or somebody that's going to cover quite a bit of ground. He's a good player, but he's not only not what we want or not what we need, but holistically, Declan Rice is so much better of a signing for Arsenal because of where we are. So yeah, I understand that, people maybe saw the Tonali deal go through and were like, why don't we just get him instead? But if Arsenal have the 100 million to spend and West Ham, give us the player, we're able to buy the player, Declan Rice, I think that signing is way better for us than Tonali would ever be. That's just me. Bright Boniface says Arsenal should go after Barella of Inter. Not sure he would ever leave there, to be honest. And not anywhere near what they were saying, like the 50 million that Newcastle were willing to offer for him. He's not leaving for that amount. To be honest. Tony says, P.S. I'm so happy I don't have to hear Ruben Neves to Arsenal ever again. Me too, and never rated him. Matt G says, Rice would be the signing of the summer. It's true. Arca says, do you think Rice and Timber can be our two DMs? I think you lose a lot of the short passing and cuteness in the middle of the pitch. I think you need at least one of Zinchenko, Partey, Jorginho, or Lavia. I'm not necessarily. It depends on how we want to play. I think we think very like the system's going to be exactly the same as it was last season. So we need players that are exactly like the players that were already there, but better. But the dynamics I feel like are going to change. I just have this weird feeling that we're not going to always play inverted on the side that Zinchenko's on. We're going to change things up a little bit. We might be inverted on the other side, and having a base of like Timber and Declan Rice gives you that physicality and that athleticism that we lack sometimes in midfield. And adding somebody like Havertz, there's a little bit more of the creative player that can link play and has a little bit of that cuteness that you're talking about. You add that in. Because really what Xhaka, the thing about Xhaka is that he kind of did two things. Like he gave us the goals that we needed and acted as that third man run into the box. And he also acted kind of like as like kind of like a beam in the house, like somebody that keeps it from falling over, because he had also like that physicality aspect of him that Zinchenko doesn't offer in midfield. So you kind of use Thomas Partey, Xhaka, and Zinchenko as like a little group there. I think if you make the player that is playing in Xhaka's position a little bit more creative, and the player sitting next to your DM is a little bit more physical, then the dynamics change, but you still kind of get the same formula, maybe even a little bit better. So I think we think too much in the terms of like what we have right now, but I think things are going to be different next season. The way that we play, the layers that we have, the options that we have, and so we just have to wait and see. But Zinchenko, I don't think is going to be used every single day the way that he was this season. I think things are going to change. That's just an inside feeling for me. Let's see. Low fat Mafat says, where does Havertz fit in? I think anywhere, really. I think he's one of those types of players that we may see in the left 8 position, also in the attacking positions. I think we're so desperate to figure out where he fits in, where the answer is probably the reason why we don't know where he fits in is probably the answer in itself, which is he's so versatile that he could play everywhere. So he probably will just play everywhere. But the idea that he's going to play a bit part role for me doesn't really, the wages and the fee associated with the player doesn't give me the feeling that he's going to be just some backup, which I've seen people say. I think he'll play a significant role. I think maybe even sometimes, you'll see Declan Rice in the 6, you'll see Havertz in the 8, you'll see some things like that. But even maybe sometimes, like if Jesus is not playing, you'll see him play false 9. We're going to have more layers and versatility next season. That's one thing I know for sure. Havertz fits everywhere, I think. Let's see. New Dawn Games. Oh, I haven't seen you in so long. Welcome back. Says, hey, Jess, I remember asking you about Declan Rice as a potential signing last year, but you said you weren't convinced by him at the time. What changed the way you see him since then? Arteta. Arteta. I think from my perspective, even when I don't necessarily understand the player, or maybe like I don't get it 110%, I actually do trust the manager in his talent ID. That's definitely something that I may question Arteta's, squad management and stuff like that. But when it comes to like knowing what players are good and what players fit, I trust him 100%. So that's why I'm relaxed on Havertz. I'm relaxed on, even with Ben White. I did not know if I thought Ben White was the right player. I definitely was like, I'm not sure about this, because at that time at Brighton, he didn't stand out to me at all. But he's like been a phenomenal player for us since he's come in my opinion. One of my favorite players. So Arteta knows more than me when it comes to talent and the players that we need. Now, Declan Rice, as I've watched him more, I can understand it more. And when I feel like we need more physicality, a little bit more athleticism, he definitely fits that bill. Where my questions around Declan Rice come in is, technically in that position, because we're so used to Thomas Partey, who's very good on the ball. How do we change the way that we play so that Declan Rice can play in that position, but we don't have to rely upon him to be that same, ball playing DM, and I just feel like the dynamics will change, but I trust Arteta's talent ID more than I trust my own. So, it's one of those, but I definitely didn't understand the Declan Rice thing before. And you weren't the only person that said that they liked him. I remember George was on the channel as well, and he spoke about him from way back. So, yeah, it's more about trusting the manager and what he wants versus what my personal preference would be, if that makes sense. My personal preference has kind of always been like I like the way Caicedo plays. Like, I like that. So when I watch Caicedo play and when I watch Declan Rice play, I do feel like I see more with Caicedo than I do with Declan Rice. The difference is that I understand the holistic aspect of having somebody like Declan Rice, the leadership, that's really important. I think his personality, he's somebody that doesn't shy away from anything. He can lead a team. So I understand that aspect, and the fact that Arteta really wants him. And that's why when people have always said, like, who do you want more, Caicedo or Rice? A lot of my feeling around picking Rice over Caicedo has been built around what Arteta wants. Arteta knows what the fuck he's doing, That's what I think. Timidio says, if Rice wants Arsenal, it's only fair that both clubs come to a reasonable deal. Yeah, I think the whole you can just sell a player off to a place that he doesn't want to go. It doesn't really make sense. Like, that's not how things go. So yeah, like you would think that West Ham would want to grant their captain a transfer to the place where he wants to go. It's just the issue is that I think almost we go too far. Like, his preferred destination is Arsenal. But if for some reason Arsenal and West Ham were not able to come to an agreement, he probably would go to Man City. So you can never really fully rule it out. And I think that's why West Ham want to get more teams involved, because if you can get more guys at the table, then it keeps Arsenal honest. If Manchester City never come to the table ever, Arsenal's that initial bid may get accepted. Do you know what I mean? And West Ham want more than that. They have to have more than that because they have FFP problems. So, yeah, I think it makes most sense for West Ham and Arsenal to come to an agreement because what his preferred destination is. But don't get it twisted. Like, if we were not to be able to come to an agreement, he probably would go to Man City, so it's still important for Arsenal to get the business done. Let's see. Eric says Caicedo is a good midfielder in terms of defending for sure, but Rice is a midfield dynamo. His so special. Trust me, Jess. I trust Arteta, so you don't have to sell him to me anymore. But yeah, I really think that he would be a good signing for us. Let's see. Let's see. Chris says, why doesn't Pep want Caicedo? I know a lot of people put maybe too much stock into these things, but I think it's important. The types of teams that are in for certain players, I think, makes me feel more comfortable about the player's talent level. Now Bayern, they were interested in Caicedo a little bit. I saw those rumors floating around, but Declan Rice being wanted by like basically everybody makes me feel like there's something there, especially Pep, because if you don't trust Arteta, I'm sure you trust Pep, right? And Pep knows what he's talking about, and he wants Declan Rice. So yeah, I don't know why Pep doesn't want Caicedo, but they've never been linked. So, maybe they become linked later on in this window. Who knows? New Dawn Game says, I think the leadership is a key factor for Arteta, right alongside his talent and versatility. The amount of players that we have gotten or been linked to that are captains already, I think shows that like Arteta wants players with personality. Odegaard, is international captain. Even like Timber is Ajax's captain right now. Declan Rice being West Ham's captain. Those things I think, yeah, Arteta really values quite a bit. So yeah. Let's see. James says, if we get all the strong links, Havertz, Rice, Timber, and Lavia, how do you blue the title race next season? How do I view the title race next season? It depends on what everybody else does. I think when people, it doesn't matter what team you support, make predictions around who's going to finish where without actually letting the transfer window conclude, I feel like is very stupid. So I've seen people already say that Arsenal are not going to finish in the top 4, but they haven't seen who we're going to get. They haven't seen who they're going to get. And they just assume based on, everybody else going to get better. Arsenal's not going to spend any money, and that's it. And any Arsenal fans making predictions this early, I feel like just hold your horses. But, do I feel like the players that we're being linked to strongly, if we were to get them, that we would be able to, and to be in a title race, you have to have about 90 points. That's about what it's been every single season. So could we potentially get 5 more points than we've had this past season and maintain the level that we had this season, but add, 2 or 3 more wins to it? Yeah, I think so. And so I do think we could be in a title race. But the other aspect of the title race is also being competitive in the other competitions. And that's the layer that I'm more concerned about, not necessarily the league and will we be in another title race. It's how does Arteta manage the cups plus the league and make sure that our levels stay the same. that's why the squad management part is going to come back. And hopefully we're having a more positive conversation about it than we have in past seasons, because that's Arteta's test. Talent ID, he's got it. Coaching on the on the training ground, he's got that. Managing the team, I'm not sure he's there yet, and that's going to be his test. Billy G says, Jess, do you think we go back in for Caicedo if we manage to bring in good money for sales? Potentially. There's competing reports around Caicedo and our interest in Caicedo. Some are saying that we're not interested in him and are like, he's not a priority. And then others are saying that the interest is still there. So, maybe it's built around how much money we get for Thomas Partey, and then going in for him. The only issue with that is like Chelsea have no other option but to go very, very strong for Caicedo because they missed out on Ugarte. And so now that they've made all these sales, I do feel like Caicedo is desperate to come to Arsenal. There's a chance we can miss out on him just because Chelsea can go just so much stronger, and we're putting so much emphasis on Declan Rice. So, and I don't know what the budget is, but I thought it was something around 200 million. So let's see how things pan out with Declan Rice first. But I do find it strange that there hasn't been much movement on Caicedo since Chelsea have already made all those sales. I felt as though they would trigger that very quickly after they got the sales done. And it doesn't seem like there's much movement there. And so Brighton may be waiting to see what the outcome of the Declan Rice deal is. And then whoever misses out on Declan Rice potentially ends up looking at Caicedo. Maybe even Arsenal get Declan Rice and still look at Caicedo. And I think Brighton are just waiting on a bidding war. So yeah, it's one of those. Let's see. Seawalk says, if Partey goes, we need to bring in Lavia and another midfielder on top of Rice. I don't know if we necessarily do. I think this idea that we need to have 3 midfielders come in then, I think Arteta views Jorginho as a stronger piece of the puzzle than Arsenal fans do. I think if you remove Thomas Partey from the equation, then Jorginho moves up in importance in Arteta's mind. And so, having Declan Rice that plays 6, Jorginho that plays 6, and Lavia that plays 6, and you already have for the 8 position, you have Odegaard, Havertz, ESR, and Vieira. Even though we may not feel confident in those choices because there's question marks around Vieira and Emile Smith-Rowe and Havertz, from Arsenal's perspective, they have 8 players that can play in the 8 position and 3, actually, because Declan Rice can also play in the 8 position. You have 5 players that can play 8/10, and then you have 3 players that are in the DM position. Numbers wise, you don't need another midfielder. So, basically what I feel like Arsenal fans are saying is they don't trust the options that we have. It's not a numbers thing. It's I'm not sure that these players are good enough thing, but Arsenal may feel like those players are good enough. I have a hard time seeing us bring in Lavia, like let's just say for 50 million after spending 100 million on Declan Rice and then turning around and buying another midfielder. That feels a little much. So yeah. Let's see. Matt says, for me, even if you don't rate Rice at all, Arsenal fans should appreciate the statement signing. Rice over City, Bayern, United is. Yeah, and I feel like some people, like, even if we were to bring him in, we'll play it down. Because here's the thing, is people don't know how to hold corn, and they don't know how to just, like, I always question some people, like, that's why I always said, like, if Arsenal do pull off the Rice signing, then what do you guys do, like, after all the things that people have said? I think some people will still play it down because if they didn't feel like we could get it done, then they have to play down the signing anyway. But it's a big deal, and I think, like you said, whether you rate him or not, you have to appreciate that. But I just have a feeling like I think some people just went way too far after those 2 first bids were rejected. And so I think the get out of jail free card will be, well, he's not that good anyway, for them. Boy says, get rid of Partey. Why is it even a debate? If you consider everything, I think you can see why you might want to get rid of him. Luis Garcia says, if Rice is nice, he should go to Arsenal. Seawalk says Simmons would be ideal, can play the 8, cover for Saka. I think the Havertz signing really just eliminates the need for Xavi Simmons. So yeah, I don't see him coming in at this point, especially with PSG having the buyback for just 6 million. Yeah. So boy saying Xavi Simmons is a better option than Lavia. Not when you need to replace Thomas Partey, who's a number 6. I feel like Arsenal want to have 3 options. In the past, we had Thomas Partey, Sambi, and El Neni. Our new options, if Partey were to leave, would be Rice, Lavia, and Jorginho. And so that would be the 3 DMs that you need to have the depth, I think required. Xavi Simmons and Lavia don't fill the same position. So if you're saying like who's Xavi Simmons would be a better signing, then you're probably looking more at Havertz than Lavia. But if Thomas Partey leaves, you need to replace him with another number 6 for sure. And then because Jorginho is going to leave next season, probably next summer, and so then you naturally would have that player step into that position. So yeah. Let's see. James says, I like the look of Arda Guler. Maybe even if he was loaned back, but 17.5 million, he could be worth a risk. It's we've been linked to him, but we've seen no movement. I think other clubs are really clamoring to get him. So yeah, like I like him, and I would love for us to like get a talent like that and loan him back or whatever. But I feel like our priorities lie elsewhere at the moment. Yeah. Let's see. But we'll see what happens with that. I mean, yeah, we'll see what happens with that one. Jeet says, I also see Odegaard moving into Xhaka role and Havertz playing in the Odegaard role. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people talk about the dynamics completely flipping and Havertz playing on the right and Odegaard playing on the left. I don't know. I think Odegaard can play on both sides, and Havertz can also play on the right. So we'll see how Arsenal play it, but we will have that versatility. And I feel like Havertz could play Odegaard's role, if Odegaard does not play. That's the value of having somebody like Havertz in the team. Let's see. Clement says, go get SMS from Lazio. He's not leaving Serie A. Like, I guarantee that. He's not leaving Serie A, and that's why he's always linked to a move to the Premier League, and it never comes about because he's not trying to leave. So, yeah. Sakshem says, we have submitted the second bid for Timber. The last I saw of that, they didn't say, like, for sure it went in. They just said, like, it's imminent, it's happening, like, it's going in. So yeah, we have to see what the outcome of that is, but yeah, Timber, it's in progress. And like the news around Declan Rice is he only wants Arsenal, and even though because Bayern are really interested in him as well, but he won't even speak to them because he only wants to come to Arsenal, which is nice. And I saw something from that team news and ticks like account that's very reliable and been very good this window, was saying that your strategy when you're trying to compete with clubs that may have more money than you or clout than you or whatever is secure the player first. Like point A is to get the player to only want you and only you, then you agree the fee, because it's a myth that you can just sell players to wherever you want. Like they still have to want to go there. And so Timber, like Declan Rice, wants to go to come to Arsenal, which is really nice. I think that's going to go under the radar as a really, really good signing. I think a lot of people aren't thinking about it because the news around Timber really came in the midst of everybody thinking that the Rice deal wasn't happening. But I think Urian Timber is going to be like I think that's going to be a really, really good signing for us if we get it over the line. Let's see. I'm just looking through, making sure nothing else has come up. I don't think we'll hear anything today. It's the weekend, so I don't imagine we'll get any like done deals or anything like that. This today we might not hear anything until Monday. So this is coming from Charles Watts. His understanding on the Timber deal is that there's progress being made. Someone he spoke to at Arsenal said it's an ongoing situation, and some are expecting the second bid to go in very soon. There's hope Arsenal and Ajax can come to an agreement, which, you know, which is a really good thing. So, yeah, I mean, we could, but before preseason starts, we could have 3 new players in the bag, which is what everybody wants. They want everything done quickly before preseason starts is quick in the transfer window. Like, that's fast. Yeah. Let's see. Craigie Sham? The Craigie Sham? Is that what this is? Says, hold on, I need to make this bigger because I can't see. Says Arsenal will go 3-2-2-3 with Timber inverted, Havertz playing alongside Odegaard. Osriel says Odegaard can play the Xhaka and Havertz Odegaard role. So you're saying it'll switch. Magzino says DiMarzio dagger hype. I know you're talking to me. For sure. We lost him in one day. Hype, composure next time, please. Maybe. I almost made it the whole way through. I was so calm until I saw that. Yeah, I have no problem getting cooked for that because you guys know my only thing is I just want Arsenal to have the best players. And if we get Rice and that means I'm cooked, then I'd rather be cooked than not get Rice, if that makes sense. Nick B says, love trolls trying to troll Arsenal at the moment. They have nothing to fall on apart from the hyperbole and hearsay. Let's see. Tony says, love you, Matt G. You guys are talking to each other. I love that. You guys are hilarious. Nashville says, spent the last 10 minutes looking for the Orny tweet. The vid title had hoodwinked me. You guys know I love a little bit of clickbait, but, I didn't say done deal. I just said breaking news. And I had a little bit of breaking news. So, I know you guys are probably mad at me, but you guys know it. The game is the game. The game is the game. Seawalk says, do you see Tommy playing at left back so we are more secure to get the best out of Kai as an 8? I actually see Kivior and Tomiyasu playing a big role at left back next season. I think we're going to see less of Zinchenko playing that inverted role in games that we don't want to see him doing it in, meaning Liverpool away, Newcastle away, Man City away, Man United away, like maybe even Everton away, like the big physical teams at the away grounds. Like we're not, I think we all kind of know that like his defensive frailties will kind of get exposed. He has some fitness issues. You can always kind of tell when he's going through something, but he just is somebody that if he's not 100% concentrated, he's really poor defensively, which I felt like we all kind of knew, but I guess seeing it in person during the title race was like a lot for a lot of people. It was a lot for me as well, but I kind of figured that's just who he is, so we need to have that other option. And I loved when we played Liverpool at home and we were able to put Tomiyasu on the left because, it shut down Mohamed Salah because obviously Salah wants to cut in and Tomiyasu had that kind of like beat. But Tomiyasu is tall and athletic and all that kind of stuff. And so we had that big back four. And I thought it really worked for us, albeit we still conceded 2 goals. But you know what I mean. We didn't have that option towards the end of the season. And so having at least 7 defenders, not including Zinchenko, because I really don't include Zinchenko in that. I really do consider him a midfielder. Tommy, Kiwi, Gabriel, Saliba, Timber, hopefully, and White. Is that everybody? Yeah. Tommy, Kiwi, Gabriel, White, Saliba, Timber. That might be only 6, but we need maybe even like one more would be great. But that gives us enough like coverage and enough like options to make sure that like we don't have to play him in those games if we don't want to. We could also close out games differently, which would be important. And Tierney, that was the other person that I was thinking of. I was like, there's somebody else that I'm thinking of that would be a nice option. The one thing about Tierney, so I've been keeping up with what's going on with Newcastle because I want to know whether or not they're going to actually be serious about Tierney, because I don't really understand why Aston Villa would be desperate to bring in Tierney because they just brought in that Moreno guy. But maybe they are wanting like another option, because I always kind of counted Aston Villa out and thought that Newcastle was like the number one option for him. And that's gone really quiet. So their people are kind of saying that Arsenal are driving a hard bargain, which basically means that we're not coming down on our fee. And I don't know if they're trying to get a discount because, of his injuries or something like that, but Arsenal are probably holding firm at over 30 million. And so they're looking at Anthony Robinson, who plays for Fulham, and they're also looking at Cucurella, who they can probably get for absolutely nothing because Chelsea are having a fire sale. So, I've seen the reports that it's like Tierney might not be going because he's had like heart-to-heart talks with Arteta. It might just be because like the interest is a lot lower because we're holding firm on our fee. And with Tierney, he's the type of player that you don't just get rid of because, somebody offers you 20 million. You need to pay upwards of 35 million for Kieran Tierney. Like the amount, like the fees that people are going for now, like he's a prime age left back that on his day in a scenario where you're highlighting his best attributes is one of the best in the league. And so, yeah, we either get the fee that we want or he stays. And that's the stance that we should have with everybody now that is a good asset. The Tierneys, the Balligans, all of them. Like nobody should be going for small fees. So if they turn around and go get Anthony Robinson instead, or turn around and get Cucurella instead, Tierney may end up staying, which I actually wouldn't be upset by as long as we have the options that we need to play the way that we want to play. And Arteta figures out a way to get the most out of Tierney when he is out on the pitch. Like there has to be a medium ground. Like I think there is a way that you can get more out of him without completely sacrificing the way that you want to play. And Arteta needs to figure out what that is. And that might be him playing in a back three. So, we usually play with three at the back. If he plays in the back as more of a center back, I do feel like that might be a better option than for him trying to invert like Zinchenko. So I wouldn't mind if Tierney stayed. But what I would mind is if we sold him for nothing to a team that has a lot of cash. Like Newcastle has no excuse. They have the 35-40 million that they should be paying for Kieran Tierney. So if they want to be cheap, they should go somewhere else because we're also helping fund a rival. And so we shouldn't go down on our fee at all for him. Let's see. Arsenio says Edu couldn't close the door, let alone close the deal for F's sake. So what are you actually upset about right now? Because if you didn't hear at the beginning of the window, Arsenal are about to put in their third and final bid for Declan Rice. And Declan Rice has pretty much told Man City that his preferred and only option that he wants to go to is Arsenal, and they have not bid. So I don't know what this was for 2 days ago. This is not from today. Like nobody could have this like today. Saida says before the transfer window opened, we were linked to quite a few right wingers. Do you still see us signing some sort of forward? Or is that deal dead now for because of Havertz? To be honest, I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I think that it depends on sales. I think that one would depend on sales. And I'm still unconvinced that Arsenal are going to spend big money on a winger when we know Saka's going to play every game. So but maybe we will. Maybe. We've been linked with Diaby. He's not somebody I've ever been convinced of. But we were also linked to Mudryk, and Mudryk and Diaby have a similar kind of profile. I know they play on different sides, but somebody that would be really good counterattacking, very fast, tricky winger, with that explosive pace that at the end of a game you definitely don't want to see. And I think that's adding another tool to the tool belt or the arsenal that we don't have. And so maybe Arsenal are looking for somebody like that, but it's definitely not a priority. That's for sure. Let's see. Clement says, right now Tierney is staying at Arsenal, even though Aston Villa is looking at him also. Yeah, right now he's still here. That's the truth. Timoteo says, City could we do player plus cash swap for Rice. I mean, they could. The player that they wanted to swap for is a player that doesn't want to leave their club. So yeah. Sass L says, Jess, it's okay to be Arteta's girl. I see you support him, which I admire, but always how much will you pay for Rice? Like, I think it's gonna be 100 million. Like that's been the price for couple of days now. So if Arsenal could get it, then if that's what I think that like the thing is like all the reports from Jacob Steinberg and Sammy McBell have always said that Arsenal are willing to go to 100 million plus for Declan Rice. So the money is there, but I can if they know that they're pretty much in a one horse race, meaning that Manchester City's interest is maybe appreciated by Declan Rice, but his sole focus is getting to Arsenal and he's desperate to come, then there's no reason for them to right off rip give them more money than we need to. So it's taken a little bit more time, but it's probably going to be 100 million. Let's see. Primo says, I think Arteta will go for a more versatile player if he looks to get another winger. I think we need to strengthen our goalie situation. I don't know if we need to strengthen goalkeeper. I think Ramsdale is the undisputed number one and will be forever. He's not going anywhere. I know people are not convinced by Matt Turner, but unless the definition of a number two goalkeeper has changed, then he's more than capable of being our number two. So goalkeeper is definitely not a position that I think Arsenal need to even be thinking about. But I appreciate that some people are not overly enthused by the options that we have there, but I think we have way bigger priorities than goalkeeper, even if you are worried about it. And the winger being versatile, the thing is like Trossard is already versatile and Kai Havertz is already versatile, and so we already have two versatile attacking players in there. So I think you want a specific profile, and the specific profile I think would either be a striker, number 9, or a devastating winger, not somebody in the middle, because we have quite a few players that are already kind of like that. So we don't need any more versatile attackers, I don't think. Those are just my feelings, though. Mark says, is there a more useless CUNT in the world football than Edu Gaspar? I don't know. I mean, if you're saying he's useless because the Rice deal is not done yet, then fair enough. But again, like these comments for me feel very premature. And if we do pull off the Rice deal after everybody has abused Edu for days, you can't reel it back. So, and I don't know if the guy that Arsenal have the second most valuable team in the world now. Like, so it's not like we have all these bums on our team and we're shit and all this kind of stuff. Like, he has helped rebuild a team from scratch. So just because we missed out on Mudryk doesn't mean he's useless. And if he brings Timber, brings Havertz is already done, brings Rice and a couple of other players, I really feel like comments like this end up making you look more useless than him. But I appreciate that everybody wants to be negative now. Get it out now. Like, get it out now, because it could go wrong very quick. Like, it really could. I don't understand why people are like, it's weird. Like, it just is. Like, it's too early. Shake says Edu has done some good work, to be fair. It hasn't been perfect. Like, that to me, that it hasn't been perfect. And I think it's okay to recognize that maybe like Arteta's made mistakes, Edu's made mistakes. I think early on when they first started, there were some clangers. Like obviously Willian was a major fail. Letting the Thomas Partey thing go all the way until the last day. I think they've learned from that because now we're getting our business done very early. So there was obviously some growing pains early on. They made some mistakes, like maybe giving Aubameyang that big ass contract. Maybe, in hindsight, you move him on. Um, you know, but and maybe that's what they're trying to avoid with Thomas Partey. Maybe they've given the big contracts and they realize that like players at that age, you don't renew them. You do something different unless they're like really pivotal to what you're trying to do, or you can't replace them or whatever. But there's been some growing pains, but I think to me, honestly, like since the window where we bought Odegaard and White and Ramsdale, I think they've been really good. I have to be honest. Like I can't flopped. Like, they've been great. So I saw people name like, oh, we brought in Marquinhos and Tavares and Sambi, but all of them were kind of punts. I think when we didn't have a lot of cash to spend, we spent big on the positions that we needed to that could not fail. And then the little money that we had left over, we did like we punts, like young players that if it didn't work out, you could still sell them on, but if they did work, it could go really well. And to be fair, some of them haven't went well. Like Tavares and Lukonga were not great signings, but they're young enough where you could move them on. Marquinhos, it's yet to be seen, but he was just a punt. He cost like what, 3 million? But Odegaard, White, Ramsdale, Zinchenko, Jesus, fabulous. Thomas Partey, if he had not got injured, by the way, we didn't know he was going to be such an injury prone player pre like assigning him because his injury record at Atletico is pretty much flawless. So, as a player, Thomas Partey is great. And Gabriel Magalhaes as well has been good. So, I just am kind of like this whole Edu is useless thing at this point feels a little bit like I just want to bitch about something. So yeah. The Craigie Sham says Arsenal sign Jeffers, Richard Wright, Segan. When we were at our best, it happens. Yeah, I mean, you make mistakes. Like not everything is going to come off, but the major things have really come off for us. And it's what's funny is like anytime something good happens, we attribute it to somebody else. But if Edu is responsible for everything that happens in terms of ingoings, outgoings, and contracts, then you have to give him a pat on the back for all the contractual renewals that we've done, because that has been for me a big highlight of this window, despite feeling really worried about the Rice deal. So, Saliba, Saka, Martinelli, Ramsdale, Odegaard is in the pipeline. Like all of these renewals for me are something that in the past I've seen Arsenal not get right. We've renewed the older players, but the younger players, we've let them leave and go to rivals. And so, yeah, I don't know if you can call somebody that's done all that work useless, but I feel like some people just want to be mad and just want to be right. And I just couldn't have a life like that because it has to be tiring. Like it really does. So yeah. Leo says Arsenal was once used to be known for losing players. If this were a couple of years ago, like, pre this regime, I do think that, you do see a Saka go to a Man City. You can't convince him to stay. And so I can't think if you're going to put heavy emphasis on the things he got right, got wrong, then you can at least acknowledge the things that he's gotten right. I think that's the only thing that's the only way to be fair. Leo says 100% facts. Ed says all the renewals have been huge. People don't care about, keeping players unless we lose them, but, it's important to get new players in, but you have to retain the guys that you have. Boy says it's like people complaining about the Cronkies. It's funny because we don't really know who to blame, as well. Like I saw people saying Arteta out because of the Rice thing. And I was just like, but why though? Like Arteta hasn't done anything wrong. We never really know where to point the blame, and like sometimes you do want to know exactly who to blame, and like there's Tim Lewis and Richard Garlick, they do all the negotiating. Edu and Arteta create the team, the profiles, the targets, like that's their job. So when it comes down to negotiating, if you don't like how we negotiate, that's actually Richard Garlick and Tim Lewis. If you don't like the fact that we don't have money, that's the Cronkies. And so yeah, I think sometimes obviously Ed is the face of recruitment and stuff like that, so he gets a lot of the shit, but I actually don't think people realize who's who, because saying Arteta out because of the Rice situation was really stupid. Let's see. Hugh says Arsenal love to complain. It's summertime. Go have some fun and hang out with the homies. Fair enough. The bottle of anime says if we get Rice, Havertz, Timber, and Lavia, how would you rate the window out of 10? I mean, if we get those four, I would say probably like an 8. I still think that there's room for like instead of Lavia, I would prefer Caicedo. Like I think obviously that's the dream and it's not always realistic, but I would prefer somebody that's maybe a little bit more done but if he's going to be an option behind Rice and Jorginho, then it's fine. And I still think maybe, like we were talking about earlier, maybe just like maybe another attacker would be great. I can't see it, but I feel like we need it, if that makes sense. Like, I could definitely see Arsenal doing that thing where Saka doesn't really have a backup and he kind of just plays every single game because he's kind of like the face, and he's kind of like our version of Mohamed Salah, who doesn't have a backup and plays every single game. But I feel like, just based on the fact that we only have like we already said, like Havertz and Trossard, if you count them as wingers, are more of like those versatile types. You might want to have somebody that's a very direct, devastating, quick, pacey winger. And if we could bring in that player, I think that would round off the window nicely. We still haven't heard anything about Nelson either. We know that there's a deal agreed in principle, but he hasn't signed it. And so I wonder if getting a winger is dependent on whether Nelson actually signs that deal or not. Um, Elisa says, I think we need two solid midfielders, even with Partey and Jorginho. We are trying to challenge on four fronts. Well, I mean, I still feel like we need more than what we actually need. I think having 3 DM options and 4 players that can play in those 8 positions for me is more than enough. So, if you feel like we need to have Jorginho, Partey, Rice, and somebody else, that's fair enough. I just think that's quite a lot. If you're talking about, if you're removing the 8 position from being a midfielder and you're just talking about that 6 position, I think having 4 guys that can play there is a little much. But I think there's just like an anxiety around getting rid of Thomas Partey, or we're always so thin in midfield, and a lot of times we're thin in midfield because the players that are there are injury prone, and the main player being Thomas Partey. So if you remove him from the equation and you bring in somebody that can play every 4 days, and then the backups to him are Jorginho, who's massively experienced, and the other guy is one of the best, 19-year-olds in that position, I think you're well stocked. Like, I don't know. I'm very apprehensive about this idea that we need like 4 players that can play in that 6 role. 3 is a lot to me. But there you go. But I also think, like, I actually think more of the players that are going to play there. So some of that also is not just about numbers. Like I said, it's about, I don't actually trust that player. But I actually think Jorginho has done quite well at Arsenal. And he's definitely not Thomas Partey. But, if he's the backup plus Lavia, I think that combination alone is enough when we know Rice will be starting. Joe says, if we do not get our top targets, then Richard out. Has been losing targets a lot, and we can't continue like that if this club is self-sustaining in the future. Get Rice done. Yeah, Rice still needs to get done. Ali says, what formation you will play? Is it a pivot or a 3-man midfield? It's a 3-man midfield, but the pivot usually ends up being one of the fullbacks. So at the end of the season, the pivot was Thomas Partey and Jorginho. Early on in the season, like for the majority of it, it was Zinchenko and Thomas Partey. That our pivot is because we play with 3 at the back, basically. So 3 at the back, all center backs, and then the fullback ends up being a part of the pivot, and it's kind of like a 3-2-5, I think. Sometimes a 2-3-5. So that's kind of what it's going to be like. And I think that's why Timber's being brought in, is he's a little bit more, I think, he's better at playing in midfield than Ben White. And so if you put him next to Rice and then you have 2 8s in front of them, then you have that box midfield that we've kind of always been playing, but it's a little bit more, has a little bit more, juice to it, because Zinchenko is a little bit lightweight, if that makes sense. So, yeah. Lucas says, West Ham look to replace Rice with former Arsenal player Matteo Guendouzi. Report now Arsenal. Then what I've been kind of like watching this as well too, that like Kondogbia, I think, is already a Marseille player, which I think that he is the replacement for Guendouzi, and they will get him. And so look out, world. Guendouzi might be back in the Premier League, playing for West Ham, no less, replacing the guy that we are hopefully getting, which is awesome. Let's see. Breezy says Timber won't be able to pull the strings like Zinchenko. Well, you don't need. So here's the thing: it's like, and this is why dynamics are so important. Is you don't actually need Timber to pull the strings as much as Zinchenko if you replace Xhaka with a player that's more creative. You know what I mean? So that's where Havertz comes in. And I know people are like, he can't play the 8. But if you don't need Xhaka there because Zinchenko is lightweight and can't defend, then you just play Timber and Rice. You have that defensive shield, and then you can go with somebody like a Havertz that's, again, can pull the strings from there. So yeah, it's just about dynamics. It's just about dynamics. I can see how it works. I can see how it doesn't work as well. And I think that's why versatility is going to be the name of the game next season, because we won't just see one way of playing. Nick B says Rice can do two people's jobs, allow us to push into the 5 formation. And, I actually think like Thomas Partey is an excellent player on his day, but one thing that he can't do is do the midfield all by himself. Like, I think he needs Xhaka as much as Xhaka needs him in order to create that strong midfield. And if one of them is even off, like, it's just a tough day. Where Declan Rice is more of the type of player that can kind of, cover the ground, snuff out danger and stuff kind of by himself. And so, like you're saying, Rice can kind of do two people's jobs, which gives us a little bit more freedom to push people forward. And one of the things about the way that Arteta plays is he's really like evolved beyond that whole like pragmatic way of play. We are no longer pragmatic at all. We take tons of risks. We push many men forward. And sometimes we get bit, but the fact that we have so many guys in attack is what gives us all those options, those little triangles and stuff like that. And so having a DM that doesn't necessarily need another player to get into that pivot next to him in order to have like that solid foundation, I think will help, like you said, push players forward. But that's just me brainstorming, things might change. So yeah, Ollie is saying, is Lavia coming in as a backup or first choice? All the reports that I've read have said that Declan Rice is going to be the number 6. So if he's the number 6, then Lavia is a backup. So yeah, Yama says we need to sell Partey for 50M to Saudis and get Caicedo. I mean, I would love Caicedo still, but who knows? And maybe it's just so hard to know what we were actually thinking about doing with Caicedo, because you don't bring in Declan Rice to play the 6 and then also bring in Caicedo and expect him to play number 6 as well. You also don't bring him in just to play like a right back, inverted right back position. That doesn't make sense. So maybe, you play Rice in the 8. I don't know. But Caicedo, to me, in this window at this time, always kind of felt like a backup option to Rice. And Lavia is more of a realistic option as somebody that's going to be a DM backup. So yeah, it's hard to know what we actually wanted Caicedo for. But yeah, Ali is saying Caicedo can play 8 very well. That's another option for him. Let's see. We're gonna get out of here soon. Clement says, Jess, what do you rate more, Rice or Partey? So hard. I would love to be able to play the both of them together. That would be my ideal situation. But everything doesn't happen the way that you want it to, right? It's so difficult. I would say at this moment in time, because I've seen him play with us, I rate Partey more, with the knowledge and the expectation that once Rice plays for Arsenal, he'll instantly become our favorite and the best thing. So but I would say Partey for now, because obviously I've seen him play in the shirt, and so you have to give him the respect that, like, of course I like, as good as I know Rice is going to be and is at the moment, I think I've seen a level from Partey where I'm like, yeah, he's definitely like on his day top 2-3 DMs, so I want to at least give Partey the respect in that way. Marco says, Jess, how tall are you? I'm 5'7". Most people say I'm shorter. No, I'm taller than what they thought I was. Arnolito says, Jess, when do you think that Orny bomb gonna drop? I would say I don't think we're gonna hear anything until like Monday. But we'll know soon. The thing about like Ornstein and Fabrizio is they tweet things when they're basically done. Like their reputation is so important that like they can't go early. And that's why I feel like a lot of their reporting on this whole situation has been kind of vague, non-committal, where other people are a little bit more like committing a little bit more because they don't have to worry about it as much. Because if Fabrizio or Ornstein get something wrong, it's, you know, so when the Ornstein bomb drops, we know that we're pretty much in the end game, but we're pretty much there now. One more bid, final bid goes in. Hopefully it gets accepted. He's ours. Done deal. Tony says Partey was the best player in the league for a while this year. Exactly. Let's see. Magzino says Orny has dropped weekend bombs before. To be fair, I think we kind of already know what's happening though. Exactly. Like I know the funny thing is that like here's the thing about reading in between the lines and, putting a couple of things together to build a picture. Because sometimes, some people are like, I don't want to hear about it until they're on the website, or they don't believe anything unless Fabrizio or Ornstein says it, right? But people were willing to believe anything when it was negative, but they don't want to believe anything when it's positive. And I think there's enough in there to feel like we're moving in the right direction, but it's not done. And it just has to get done at this point. But we're in a good position, which I'm happy about because for a minute I was scared um, that maybe we were out of it. I didn't understand what was going on. Now we have a little bit more clarity. AJ says, honestly, we need to get Rice and Caicedo and we need to just pay the money. We have the funds and we can just we can make even more, at least 100 M's off offloading players. I mean, yeah, like idealistically, we could get Rice and Caicedo and we could just pay the money. But maybe also not going in with that initial 120 for West Ham gives you the additional 20, you know, plus whatever you get for Thomas Partey, and maybe you could put that together in order to make a deal for Caicedo. That's why it's important, I think, not to just throw money around and just pay the money. But I do agree that offloading players is going to be really important. And beyond like some of the, like even like Holding, even we sell him, we should be getting at least 10 million for him because he's experienced and he's English. Like we should be getting at least 10 million for him. So there should be no, except for maybe like Cedric, Pepe, and El Neni, any sort of like canceling contract type thing. Everybody else we should be selling for decent money. So like you say, there's money to be had in that way. But yeah, like I'm excited. Like I can't lie, like I am excited. So, we'll see, how things play out, but I think we're in a good position. I think, we have some things to be positive about, and we'll see how things kind of unfold over the next couple of days. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel. Get in the comment section after and let me know what you guys have thought about everything. If anything drops, obviously I'll come back, but I would say maybe expect another video on like Monday, because I think some things will come out then. But I love you guys no matter what's going on. No matter what's going on, I love you guys. Even if you guys are driving me crazy with all the negativity, it's fine. Enjoy your weekend. Love y'all.